Okay, we're back, and we're continuing this sample practice test on comparing fractions, decimals, percents, and some percent problems. And we're at this point now. This problem here that says 36 is 12% of what number? Remember, one thing that is true that we're taking advantage of is that parts divided by wholes equals percents. Okay, what exactly does that mean? Well, say I had a pizza pie and I divided it into 4 equal sized parts. And I wanted to talk about this one shaded part. So I'm not talking about the 3 unshaded. I want to consider the one shaded for the moment. Well, I can see that I have 1/4 is shaded. Okay. And 1/4 is the same as 25%. Okay, now why does this work? Well, 25% is the same thing as 25 over 100. And I can reduce 25 over 100. I can divide both of those by 25. So if I divide the top and bottom by 25, 25 divided by 25 is 1, and 100 divided by 25 is 4. This is just like, if I have $1 and I put them into 25-cent piles, I'm going to have 4 quarters. Okay, so let's return back to this explanation. So what we did here is this is my part. And my part is, I want to focus, the word is helps me identify the part. So this is my part. My percent, here's my percent, of course. And then my of is my whole. And the word of is kind of the key word to identify what the whole is. So if I use this little tool right here, my part over my whole, well, I'm not given a whole, am I? It's as I'm asked for it, is my percent. And percent, remember, out of 100. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to write it out of 100. 12 over 100. So now I have a problem that I've seen many times before. I have, I'm not so sure that you can see that clearly because of the lighting. I have 36 over the whole, which I don't know, is going to be equal to 12%, 12 over 100. Well, is there anything I could do to make this look like this? Well, and I noticed that 12 and 36, well, if I multiply 12 by 3, I get 36. So if I multiply 12 by 3 to get 36, right, and that'll take me here, that means I have to multiply 100 by 3. So that means the problem starts looking like this. 36 over 300, 100 times 3 is 300, is equal to 12 over 100, or 12%. And this should make sense because my part here is actually even larger than this. The number that the part is actually larger than this percentage, because if I was to ask well, I'm gonna pause my question here and come back to it, and unless I forget it as I move on. Let's move on to the next problem. I don't want to make this any longer than need be. Not every question I asked is I mean to ask this should be followed up. But I guess to finish this though, that 36 is 12% of 300. That's what we found out. And it should make sense actually, because if I asked what's 12% of 100, well, that answer would be 12, right? And this number is larger than 12, so it's not surprising that the 300 is larger than the 100. I think that's what I was trying to get at. Let's go here. So we want to order these fractions from least to greatest, from smallest to largest. Well, again, I can't make any comparisons because all my denominators are different values. So is there a number I can divide, I can use that can be evenly divided by all of these? So if I can compare some individuals, and if I start with the larger one, that may be the easier thing to think of. So if I was to compare two of these, between 12 and 6, well, 12, I can divide 12 and 6 evenly. 12 divided by 12 works, and 12 divided by 6 works. So 12 is pretty small there, but I can't divide 12 by 9, so that doesn't work. So what's the smallest number I can divide 12 and 9 into? Well, what are my multiples of 12? I want to write my large multiples. 12, 24. That's not a very clear 24, is it? 36, 48. Let's pause here for a moment. I can divide 12 by 3, but I can't 12 by 9. Can I divide, so let's move on. Can I divide 24 by 3? Yes. Can I divide 24 by 9? No. Can I divide 36 by 3? Yes. That works. Can I divide 36 by 9? Yes. And by 6? Yes. And by 12. So it looks like 36 is a common denominator I can use. So I'm going to expand this out a little bit to give myself some room. So 2/3 times what is going to get me 36? Well, I'm going to have to multiply by 12. And then let's do 4/9. What do I multiply 9 by to make 36? Well, I multiply by 4. And my next fraction is 5/6. So what do I multiply 6 by to make 36? Well, I multiply 6 by 6. And last is 7/12. What do I multiply? 12 divided times 3 will make 36. So I have to multiply the numerator by 3. Now when I do this, I'm going to have 2 times 12 is 24. 3 times 12 is 36. 4 times 4 is 16. 9 times 4 is 36. 5 times 6 is 30 over 36. 7 times 3 is 21 over 36. And now all of my denominators are the same, and I can make my comparison. So what's the smallest numerator? Well, it looks like 16/36, and that came from the 4/9, so my smallest fraction is 4/9. And my next, what's the next largest? Looks like 21, because 21 is less than 24 and 30, and that came from my 7/12. Next, I have 24/36, which came from 2/3. And lastly, what does it leave me with? It leaves me with the 5/6. So there are my fractions ordered from least to greatest. Find 16% of 75. So in what we did in class here is I need to find 16%. I'm going to write as a decimal. So 16% is the same thing as 16 over 100. I'm going to do this step by step. So 16 over 100. 16 over 100 is the same thing. I could reduce this even if I wanted to, but actually I'm not in this case because it makes going to a decimal, I don't want to do that. This is the same thing as 16 divided by 100. And remember what we said, that when we divide by 100, we're shifting the decimal. I can see it looks like this is not showing up as nicely as I would like it to. So 16% is the same thing as 16 over 100, because percent out of 100. So this is 16 divided by 100. And when I divide by 100, that's a matter of shifting the decimal point. So here's my number 16. When I have no decimal point written, I always understand that's to the far right. And when I divide by 100, I shift the decimal point 2 places. Without going into details, why in this case? So 16 hundredths is how I say that, and that's literally how I write it. 16 hundredths. So that's the importance of being able to say a decimal number, because I say this as 0 and 16 hundredths. Well, that's exactly how I write 16 hundredths. So it's important that you know how to say decimal numbers. Okay, now we have our tool here. So what we're going to do is we're going to multiply 16 hundredths, or 16%, times 75. So the of is going to become a multiply here. I'm going to have to draw a line across things. That's not my favorite thing to do. Times 75. And when we did this multiplication, I'm going to rewrite it vertically. So I have times 75. And yes, I'm not really paying attention to lining up the decimals when I'm multiplying here. If I was adding, I would pay particular attention to lining up the decimals, but in this case I'm not. I'm going to notice that I have a number here that has 2 place values to the right of the decimal. 1, 2. With that in mind, now I'm just going to proceed as a multiplication problem here. 5 times 6 is 30. Put down the 0, carry the 3. 5 times 1 is 5. Plus 3 is 8. Now I have to shift over to the next position, so I first put down a 0. Now I multiply. 7 times 6 is 42. Put down the 2 and I carry the 4. 7 times 1 is 7, plus 4 is 11. So 11. I've multiplied. Now I'm going to add things up. I have 0. 8 and 2, 8 plus 2 is 10. I have to carry the 1. 1 and 1 is 2. And 1. So here's my, this is the answer to 16 times 75. But now I'm going to come back and I'm going to remember that I have these 2 place values here, right? Here's my answer as given in the decimal, because there's no decimal shown. I understand it to be right here. But because I have 2 place values, I'm going to have to shift my decimal 2 spots to the left before I get my final answer of 12. So if we were to put it back in the problem, what that's saying is that 12 is 16% of 75. One more problem here. Find 250% of 24. This one should go a little quicker because this looks much like this. The only difference now is I've got this percent that's over 100. Well, remember 100%, just as a reminder, 100% is the same as 1. So 200% is going to be the same as 2. Now I have 250%. But we can change that to a decimal the same way we did here. That is, we can shift the decimal point over twice. So here's 250. Here's my decimal point. Well, here's 250 if you can see it in this glare. Sorry about the lighting. There's my decimal point. I'm going to move it over twice. And 50% is the same thing as 2 and 5/10. And hopefully this also makes sense in this way. 100% of a pizza is 1 whole pizza, right? So that'd be 1 whole pizza. So if I had 200%, I would have 2 pizzas, right? If I have 250%, well, 50% is the same as a half. Well, 2 whole pizzas and half of another pizza. That's a half a pizza. So 2.5 pizzas, 250%. So I'm going to multiply this by 24. And before I get to the answer, 100% of 24 is going to be 24. So 250%, my answer better be more than 24. As a matter of fact, 200% is simply just twice 100%, and twice 24 is 48. So this is even going to be larger than 48. Let's see what happens when we do the problem. So I have one place value in this case, and now let's do the multiplying. 4 times 5 is 20. Put down the 0, I carry the 2. 4 times 2 is 8, plus 2 is 10. And that makes sense because 4 times 25 is 100. I'll put down a 0. 2 times 5 is 10. Carry the 1. 2 times 2 is 4, plus 1 is 5. Now add all these up. I have 0, 0, and 6. Here's my place value to begin with. I'm going to move it over 1 spot. And my final answer is going to be 60. Let's see if this makes, well, and certainly 60 is more than 48, so it makes sense that way. As a matter of fact, if I think about what is half, or 50%, of 24, well, 50% of 24 is just half of 24. Half of 24 is 12. So if I look at just this portion here, %200 plus 50% is 250%. Well, if I add those two numbers up on the other side here, I would add these two numbers up. And 48 plus 12 is 60. So 250% of 24 does equal 60. Both sort of reasoned out here as well as calculated. I do hope this helps.